It's July 6th, 1988, out in the middle of the North Sea. A truly catastrophic series of events is about to unfold. But here's the thing, it doesn't start with a bang. It starts with a single piece of paper. This is the story of Piper Alpha. You know, most safety professionals know that lockout/tagout is important. That's a given. But I think very few of us truly understand the sheer scale of what can happen when a permit-to-work system fails. This whole disaster, it didn't start with some massive explosion, no. It started with a simple and utterly tragic communication breakdown during a totally routine shift handover. So in this explainer, that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna perform an anatomical breakdown of that failure. We're gonna trace the sequence of events to understand not just how it all went so wrong, but why the modern safety systems we all rely on today were basically born from the ashes of this disaster. All right, so let's start our investigation. We're rewinding to the morning of July 6th, and it all begins with a routine maintenance task. You know, the kind of thing that happens thousands of times a day on industrial sites all over the world. But this one was going to be different. Okay, so the day shift crew starts their maintenance on this piece of equipment, a condensate pump called Pump A. Pretty standard stuff. They isolate it, they pull its pressure safety valve for recertification, and then they stick a temporary blind flange on to seal the open pipe. But here's the crucial part. They couldn't get the job finished by the end of their shift, so the work permit was suspended. And this detail is everything. Because that valve was supposed to be put back on pretty quickly, it's widely believed that the bolts on that temporary flange, they were only hand-tightened. And you have to understand, this distinction between a closed and a suspended permit is absolutely critical. A closed permit means the job is done, the equipment is safe to use. Simple. But a suspended permit, that means the exact opposite. The equipment is left in a dangerous, unsafe state. It's basically a cliffhanger, and it means you absolutely must have a flawless handover to the next crew. Anything less is just a recipe for disaster. So that cliffhanger we just talked about, everything now hinged on the shift handover. And this is the exact moment where a simple gap in procedure turns into a fatal communication breakdown. The very system that was designed to prevent this exact scenario was about to completely fall apart. And here's where we can see that broken system in real time. On Piper Alpha, the whole permit-to-work process was paper-based, and it was dangerously decentralized. So get this, the active permit for the pump maintenance was in the control room where it should be, but the suspended permit for that missing safety valve, that was filed away in a completely separate safety office. And to make matters worse, it was filed by trade, not by the piece of equipment. There was no single source of truth for the safety status of anything on that rig. And right here, this is the smoking gun. The night shift crew comes on, they see one permit for Pump A's overhaul, and they know that particular job hasn't even started yet. So in their minds, the pump is fine. What they were completely unaware of was that second critical permit for the removed safety valve. They had absolutely no idea that a hand-tightened piece of metal was the only thing holding back high-pressure gas. With an incomplete picture, they made a totally logical but completely fatal assumption. So this really brings us to a critical question, and I want you to think about this for your own workplace. How strictly does your facility handle shift handovers when a lockout procedure stays active overnight? How is that responsibility actually transferred? Is it just a verbal confirmation? Is it logged in some central digital system? Is it absolutely foolproof? Because on Piper Alpha, it sure wasn't. Okay, so the communication failure is complete. The trap has been set, the stage is now ready for disaster, and a physical failure is pretty much inevitable. And when it comes, it's going to escalate with a speed that is just unimaginable. At 9:45 p.m., the other pump, Pump B, trips offline. Now, with production on the line, the crew turns to Pump A, the one they believe is safe and ready to go. 10 minutes later, their fatal assumption becomes a reality, as high-pressure gas just screams out from that hand-tightened flange. The gas cloud finds an ignition source, and at 10 p.m., the first massive explosion rips through the platform. It completely obliterates the control room. But the disaster, it was just getting started. The fire from that blast ruptures a major gas pipeline coming in from a neighboring platform, which turns the fire into this uncontrollable inferno. And then another pipeline fails, and another. The platform was literally being fed fuel from all sides, sealing its fate. The human cost of these system failures, it's just staggering. 167 men lost their lives that night. Out of the 226 people on board, only 61 survived.
While the actions of the crew triggered the event, it was the platform's own design flaws that turned what was a very serious incident into an absolute uncontrollable catastrophe. The key safety defenses failed at the exact moment they were needed most.
Let's take the platform's firewalls, for example. Piper Alpha was originally built to produce oil, so its walls were designed to resist a pool fire. High heat. But later, it was retrofitted to process natural gas. And those walls were never upgraded to withstand the concussive force, the overpressure, of a gas explosion. So the first blast didn't burn through the walls. It shattered them like they were made of glass. The inferno spread instantly.
And the failures just kept coming, one after another. The automatic firewater system, it had been switched to manual to protect divers, even though there were no divers in the water. So it never activated. The control room, destroyed in the first blast, wiping out any chance of command and control. The critical gas pipelines, those risers, they weren't fireproofed, so they buckled and ruptured under the intense heat. And then the emergency power failed, plunging the survivors into total darkness. Literally, every single layer of defense failed.
In the aftermath of all this, a massive public inquiry led by Lord Cullen wouldn't just investigate this one disaster. It would fundamentally change offshore safety regulations across the entire globe. Forever. The Cullen Report was truly a landmark investigation. It came back with 106 specific recommendations for change, and it covered everything from management systems to the physical design of the platforms. And what's truly remarkable is that the government and the entire industry accepted every single one. Probably the single most important change was the creation of what's known as the safety case regime. This completely flipped the old way of doing things. Before, regulators had a kind of checklist of rules. Now, operators had to proactively prove to the regulator that they understood all their risks and had robust systems in place to manage them. The burden of proof for safety shifted entirely from the regulator to the operator. And this brings us back to the ultimate lesson from Piper Alpha. The stringent, sometimes, complex safety procedures that we all follow today, the detailed permits, the rigorous shift handovers, the lockout verifications, these things weren't just created in a boardroom. They were forged in the fire of tragedies just like this one. They are, quite literally, written in blood. So for anyone out there working in a high-hazard environment, I want you to remember this. Lockout/tagout is not just paperwork. A permit-to-work system is not just bureaucracy. They are the final barrier, and often they are the only barrier standing between a routine maintenance job and an absolute catastrophe. If you want to dive deeper into real industrial disaster lessons, OSHA breakdowns, and the kind of safety education that can actually save lives, make sure you subscribe to HSestudy.